I'm going to show you how to inspect your chain and sprocket on your motorcycle. The first thing you want to do is to get a manual for your bike and follow the instructions in the manual, because they might vary from what I'm going to tell you. I'm just going to give you a general rule. Next thing you want to do is get your bike upright and get the rear wheel off the ground so you can rotate the rear wheel. To inspect your sprocket, you want to look at each tooth, make sure that they're straight up and down, they're not bent. It's kind of hard to explain how to look for a worn sprocket without the best thing to do is if you have a newer sprocket to compare it to and you want to look for any bent teeth, just rotate your rear sprocket, look at each tooth. Also do that with your front sprocket. You can see it behind the chain guard, sprocket guard. I know this bike. This bike only has 3,000 miles on it, so I know that they're all straight and identical. The grooves are identical. Next thing you can do for the chain, a general rule for the chain is to grab it midway on the rear sprocket and pull out with a reasonable amount of force. And if you can lift the chain out far enough to reveal 1/3 of a sprocket tooth, then the chain is worn. Another test you can do on the chain, I didn't take this chain off because it doesn't have a easy master link to remove. I would try it in several different spots too. You can see that this is a fairly new chain, so it's not much play in that one. Another thing you can do is, I've got another chain off of another motorcycle, is you can lay it out and compress the links together and take a measurement. And then after you take that measurement, grab both ends of the chain and pull on them so it stretches the chain, and take another measurement. And the measurement should not vary more than a 1/4 inch for every foot of chain. So if you have 4 feet of chain, there shouldn't be more than an inch difference between those two measurements. Another way of checking this particular chain according to the manufacturer's instructions is to loosen up the axle, tighten the chain and to remove all slack, so there's no slack in it. Then count 21 pins. So you start here and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. till you get to 21, which is somewhere down here. Then you measure the distance between the first pin and the 21st pin, and it shouldn't be more than 12.72. And they're basically it's the same method that I showed you earlier about taking the chain and compressing it, and then taking a measurement, and then stretching it out, and then taking another measurement. That's basically what they're doing. To measure the adjustment, the chain adjustment on this particular bike, this is a 2009 KLR 650. It's a Kawasaki. You want to measure the distance from your rear sprocket, the center of your rear sprocket, to the center of your front sprocket, and then divide that by 2. That'll give you your center point, which on this bike the distance is about 2 feet, so 1 foot is about right here at the beginning of the sticker. Once you find that point, you want to measure the deflection on your rear chain, and we'll do that next. To measure the deflection on this bike, you want to the rear chain deflection, you want to like press down on the chain and get a reference point. Let's say this is a steel rule. I'm going to use the 1/8 measurements. The correct deflection for this chain should be anywhere between 1 3/8 to 1 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to press down the midway point. Say set that at the bottom of my ruler. It should be about right there. Then I'm going to press up and take another reading, and it's right at, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's about 4/8 or 1/2 inch. So it's about 1.5 inches, which is in between 1 inch and 3/8 and 1 3/4 inches. So this chain is adjusted. As far as chain lubrication, this particular chain here on this Kawasaki is an O-ring chain. Technically, O-ring chains shouldn't need to be lubricated. The O-ring in this chain is supposed to hold in the lube that's injected in the chain when it's manufactured, and it's also supposed to protect the chain. On this older chain where I demonstrated chain stretch, this isn't an O-ring chain, and it should be lubricated, I would think, about every 1,000 miles. But always check check your manual and go with what your manual says. If I needed to adjust my chain, I'd come over to the right side of the bike and I would take out this cotter pin, and then I would loosen up this axle nut to make sure my axle's loose. Then I would, these are adjusting bolts, and they're on both sides of the swing arm, and these adjusting bolts have to be turned evenly. So if you turn this one 1/4 of a turn, you have to go to the other side and make sure you turn that one in the same direction 1/4 of a turn. If you turn these adjusting nuts counterclockwise, it will push the axle this way back, which would decrease deflection. If you turn these adjusting bolts clockwise, it will push the axle forward, or not push, but it will let the axle go forward, and that will decrease deflection in the chain. So you remember, you want to turn these evenly on both sides, and there's marks in this swing arm which you can use to gauge where the position of this axle is on the right side, and they're also on the left side, so that the position should be even on both sides. After you get your deflection in the correct setting, adjust these. You can lock down these lock nuts so that this adjuster won't turn. Then come back and tighten down your axle nut. This axle nut should be tightened to 72 foot-pounds. This is a 2009 Kawasaki KLR 650. You should put in a new cotter pin. You should always replace these once you take them out. That reminds me, I forgot to mention something. Let's say that you didn't turn these screws out evenly on both sides, these adjusting bolts, and let's say that the sprocket was too far this way. So that would mean that this left axle is farther back than the right side of the axle. If it's too far this way or too far this way, it can cause excessive wear on your chain and sprocket. You want to check the inside of your chain. You can see the excessive wear. Especially if you look at the bottom here, you can really get a good picture of the inside of the chain. But that's one thing to look for, which I forgot to mention. So anyway, I hope you found this video helpful, and thank you for watching.